Alrighty folks, let's talk about the Demko knives, Freereign in CPM3V. We'll do a bit of a tabletop review here. I'm going to make some video of using the knife, doing some kitchen prep, doing some wood splitting, doing some feather sticking, those kind of things, because those are what I'm going to use the knife for. So let's get into it. I think I'll start kind of the reason why I bought this knife. So I was using, in place of this knife in a 5-inch blade range, the Work Tough Gear Asset. And although that's a beautiful knife, it's a great knife, it just seemed heavy for what it was. And I happened to get a cold steel SRK in CPM3V when there was a really good sale on, and I ended up thinking, I think I could get a knife similar to this that's quite lightweight, and it'll work really good as kind of a general use camp knife, that kind of stuff. And so I kind of looked up these Demko Freereigns, and I was very impressed with the specs and how they looked and the materials used and all that kind of stuff, so I ended up getting them. So I'm a big fan of CPM3V. It's relatively easy to sharpen. It holds an edge for a really long time. I would say it's like, to me, it feels mostly stainless. You can get like a little bit of rust, but it's always just surface rust, and it just wipes off with like a rag instantly. So I find it's pretty stainless, and it's very tough steel. So I quite like the CPM3V steel. So I'm happy with that on this knife. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's start with the sheath. Sheath is kind of an interesting design. So from what I remember, it's kind of like more of like a similar, like a glass-filled nylon, I think, if I remember correctly. But it's like a pancake, where these little side parts with the screws kind of hold it together. You can take it apart and it comes in half. You can wash it out, that kind of stuff. It also prevents the blade from rubbing on it, like people say that the cold steel ones do, although that's never been my experience. So that solves, that perceived problem. You've got lots of mounting points on the sheath here for different mounting accessories. The sheath comes with a belt loop, nylon belt loop with a button on there, so you can basically just undo this, slip it on your belt, and do it up. Same to get it off, so then you don't have to take your belt off. That's always nice. And then you've got this little kind of retaining strap here to keep the knife from sliding around too much. I don't really use these with knives to have good retention in the sheath. This knife has, I would say, almost even too much retention in the sheath. To get it out, I've got to push quite hard with my thumb to get it out. If you grab the sheath and just yank it out, it comes out okay. So that's not too bad. So yeah, that's the sheath. I do like the blue around the outside with the contour design in there as well. It's very aesthetically pleasing to me. I love the kind of contour type design. It always looks really good. Okay, onto the knife. So this knife weighs about 8 ounces, I believe, which is quite a bit heavier than the Asset that I'm replacing it with, that I'm replacing with this. It's about 8 ounces, so it's quite light. I think the Asset was like 12 ounces or something like that. It was quite heavy for the size of knife it was. Some things I like over that type of design on this knife I'll kind of talk about here as well. So let's start with the handle. The handle is kind of like one of those, I don't know if they're injection molded, but anyways, like a molded kind of rubberized handle. It indents if you put pressure on it a little bit, but it still comes across as being quite tough. It's kind of like hard, but not hard, like super hard. Feels warm in the hand, which is going to help in those cold temperatures if you're like me and in Canada or even the northern part of the States. Winter gets cold, you're out there, it's going to prevent the knife handle from sucking the heat out of your hand and fatiguing your hand. Frankly, when that happens, it actually legitimately hurts. It's just so cold, and and sucks the life out of your hand. So it's nice to have a handle like this on there where it encompasses the entire tang of the knife. You can see the tang of the knife goes all the way through and sticks out the butt there. Yeah, so the handle I like, it's got these little diamond kind of grips on the side, and then it's smooth top and bottom. You got a little finger cut out here, so your finger's never going to slide up over the blade by accident. At least not when you're holding it tightly. And then you've got a good bird beak back here for kind of doing a little bit of light chopping kind of stuff if you want. It also just kind of retains your hand in there. I've got a medium-sized glove hand, and you could easily fit another of my pinky fingers in here. So it's my personal opinion that this would probably fit a large to extra large hand, this grip, which is good for you bigger folks. Yeah, but yeah, you got that full-length tang. You know, if you want to see how tough this thing is, Andrew Demko did basically a video where they were just torture testing this thing, and they were like hammering it into like a metal baseball bat, and they were putting a steel pipe on the grip and literally putting it in a vise and just bending it way over. So it's obviously very tough. It's more, you know, it's going to take more abuse than I'm ever going to give it. So I'm not worried about that tang breaking off or anything like that. Yeah, so I do like the rubberized grip. Definitely comfortable. Good for, you know, you don't have to worry as much about water kind of getting in there and causing problems like you might with something with like slab-sided grips, which would be like most of my Cardar G10 grips, that kind of thing. What else is there to say about the handle? I don't think too much. Just a good handle. I also like the blue color. I like blue. I like high vis stuff for my outdoor gear, because sometimes I'll set something down when I'm doing something and I don't think about where I put it down, and I'm like, oh god, where did I put that damn thing? And it's like the same color as the grass or something, and you spend like 10 minutes looking for it, whereas this, you're going to find it right away. One example of that's happened to me is when I was I shot a moose last year, and when I was you know, processing it, you know, I set my knives down, and you know, every so often I'd be like, where did I put that stupid thing? And I have to look for a minute for it. With this thing, you're not going to have that problem. And also, with this thing, you're not going to have like blood and stuff getting in between the grips. You might, I'd be surprised if it got in between kind of the ends. It seems pretty kind of like watertight there. So I think it'd be a good option for that kind of stuff, some kind of more messy tasks. It's going to wash off better, and not have to worry about crud getting in there. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the blade now. The blade's 5-inch blade. It's a drop point. Again, CPM3V steel. The geometry of the blade is really good. I feel like that's something Andrew Demko's really good at, is blade geometries. This has a high saber grind, and it's a very high saber grind. It's like a 1/4 inch from the top here, if you can see that. So the grind goes all the way up to right here. What that does is it makes the knife a lot more slicey, so you can cut through things. It'll slice better. It won't feel like it's getting hung up. You'll see that when I compare it to the SRK. The SRK is almost the opposite of that. It's got like a mid saber grind, which makes it kind of more like a wedge. So I do like that. It makes the knife slicey. You want a knife of this size that's going to be used for kind of general tasks, food prep, that kind of stuff. You want it to be a little slicey. It's got a good thickness to it. I'd say that's probably at least 3/16 thick. I'm not exactly sure what the specs are on the thickness, but it's a good thickness. It's going to be tough. You're not going to have any issues with toughness on this thing when it's that thick of CPM3V. And of course it tapers towards the tip here, so the knife is still quite stabby, which is important to me, because in my imagination of of worrying, I guess, is, you know, if a wild animal attacks me or my family, I want to be able to stab it and not have anything get hung up. So there's that. And then, you know, if you're stabbing and prying little things, you know, that'd be helpful as well. Let's see here. You got a little sharpening choil, which apparently matters to some people. I've never really understood why that's important, to be honest, when I'm sharpening my knives, but I'm sure it does something. It's important to some people, at least. And you got this jimping on the back here. The jimping is actually really not the greatest. You got these 3 little kind of cutouts on the spine of the blade. They're very rounded off, so like your finger doesn't actually, like if I push on my thumb, it just slides kind of over them. It doesn't actually like stick. Whereas if you give me a second, I'll bring out my this is another Demko knife. This is the Nano Shark folding knife. You can see this jimping here. So both of these sets of jimping are way better than what's on that knife. So, you know, you can see I can still slide my finger kind of over this, but it actually does catch, so it'd be okay. But what's even better is this kind of sharper jimping, a little bit lower down on the mechanism. I can't even slide my finger. That's the kind of jimping that I would want right here on the spine of this knife, is something that really grips my thumb, so that when I'm, you know, really giving her, my thumb's not slipping out all the time. So, you know, hopefully he updates that in the future, but yeah, hopefully he does that, because it's basically pointless to have there when it doesn't even do anything. Like, you might as well just have the spine come all the way up. Yeah, so what else is there to say? You've got a flat spine, so it doesn't actually, there's no swedge here. I think the MagnaCut version is swedged, but I actually prefer it not to be swedged, just because if I'm batoning, I want to be able to hit and make some good contact on that tip of the blade, near the tip of the blade there, without it burning my baton in a few seconds. So I do like that about this design. Yeah, I don't know what else there is to say. You got the drop point design. I kind of mentioned that already. I do like that design. Another thing you can use for the drop point is putting your finger up top on the blade here, just to get, when you're about to gut an animal, when you're kind of cutting through the skin, you can just use the tip of the knife so that you're hopefully not going to nick the intestines and make a big mess of your meat and stuff. And then you got the pommel on the back here, kind of told you about that exposed tang. You use that to hit stuff with, tent pegs maybe, or nails, or, you know, disgruntled neighborly campers, who knows. Anyway, so that's there. But yeah, overall this knife is really good. It's really lightweight, just feels really good, so I really like it. So let's compare it to a couple other knives. I don't have that asset anymore. I actually sold it so I could buy this knife, but I do have the Cold Steel SRK, and I've got the Recon Scout, which is a little bit out of the league of that thing, but so I'm going to compare it to this knife because they're very similar. SRK's got about 1 inch more blade length. The blade depth is actually less on the SRK, and it's got that mid saber grind. So basically this thing's more of a wedge and less of a slicer. This is more of a slicer and less of a wedge, I feel like. If you look at the blade thicknesses, the SRK is definitely thicker looking, but not by much. I think the SRK's got a 1/4 inch thick blade, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah. But the SRK is really good as a survival knife, like SRK, survival rescue knife, haha. But it really truly is. This one's also in CPM3V, by the way. I got it super on sale. But this one's got a swedge on it, so when you're batoning on it, you know, it's gonna damage your baton pretty quickly. For me, this is kind of like a survival knife. It's gonna help me. You know, if a wild animal attacks me, I can stab it with it. Obviously, it's basically practically a spear point on the tip there. And then, you know, it's got a 90-degree spine, so you can do some sparks. And I'll show you the Demko does not strike a ferro rod. So I'll do it with the SRK first. SRK strikes a ferro rod. This has got that 90-degree spine. And the Demko does absolutely nothing. So I'm gonna have to sharpen the spine on the Demko to make it spark, so I can use it with a ferro rod, although my ferro rod is usually my backup for my lighter. I usually just carry a lighter, because in a survival situation I'm not gonna want to be dicking around with a ferro rod, but if it's all I got, then I'll use it. And even if your lighter doesn't work, you can break it open and use the lighter fluid to actually start the fire with the fire steel. So, but yeah. Anyways, yeah. So this thing's gonna split. The SRK is gonna split wood better. It's got that craton handle, so it's gonna be really good in cold weather. It's a little bit more of a heavy-duty knife, I would say. just feels more heavy duty. But it's kind of a lightweight survival knife is what I would consider it. Because when I usually think of survival knife, I think of something that can chop okay, but also I'm going to be able to use it for kind of fighting, kind of stabbing, and it's going to split wood and be able to span a decent amount of wood. Whereas this can span wood pretty good, 6 inches. The Cold Steel Recon Scout I've got here is 8 inches, so it's got a little bit more span. That's probably my favorite survival knife is a Recon Scout. I'll explain why in a minute. You got a similar kind of sheath, the Cold Steel Secure Axe. I've never had a problem with them dulling knives. I find them to be just as good as Kydex. Okay, so that's the SRK. And then, actually, let's leave the SRK out for scale here. And we will bring out the Recon Scout. So obviously a much bigger knife than the Demko Freereign or the SRK. But I did want to bring it out just because you can look at the blade geometry of these 3 different knives and you can see the Recon Scout and the Freereign are very similar. The Recon Scout has a full flat grind, which means the grind goes all the way to the spine of the blade, whereas the Freereign is just below the spine. The SRK is about halfway. So this actually splits wood quite well, but that's because it's got like I think it's like 0.3 of an inch thick blade. It's very, very thick. If I compare that to the Freereign, I mean, it's like quite a bit more thick than the Freereign. It's also quite a bit bigger and heftier of a knife, but the thing is with that full flat grind, it still remains very, very slicey. So it's actually a very good knife for a lot of different things, and I feel like this is actually a better survival knife than the SRK is. You can tear me apart in the comments for saying that. But the only changes I would really do to this blade is bring the blade further back here, kind of like on the SRK, just to make it come back, and I'd get rid of this guard and have a grip identical to the SRK, just with a little finger stop there. That would be perfect for a survival knife. That'd be my dream survival knife. So, but yeah, the Recon Scout's about as close as I'm going to get probably, and it's a very good survival knife. Very good for a lot of different things, but it is hefty. It's 14 ounces, I believe, whereas the Demko Freereign is about 8 ounces, so it's almost twice as heavy as the Demko Freereign. And I feel like in a real, true survival situation, I'm not sure this is going to do a heck of a lot better than this will, because you can split a large round with a small knife. I have a video on how to do that, if you want to watch that on my channel somewhere, where I use the Work Tough Gear. Well, I can't remember what the knife is called. I use a Work Tough Gear knife to do it anyway, a little 4-inch knife. But basically, the gist of it, all you do is you take a wood round, and let's pretend this is twice as thick, so you just take out little chunks and you work your way back, and then you end up having chopped up the whole thing effectively. So it does work doing that. So yeah, I do quite like the Demko Freereign. There's some flaws about it that I don't like, which, you know, is that kind of rounded spine. The jimping I don't like, because it doesn't really work. And then if I had to be really, really picky, I'd say the grip for me is just a little too long. You could have cut a little bit off this grip, but there's lots of different hand sizes out there, and this fits my hand, and I'm sure it'll fit someone with a large or extra large hand too, so good compromise there. But yeah, mostly the fact that it's a straight fire steel and just that jimping. So really minor things when it comes down to it, if you ask me. So I really do like this knife. I've been using it for some kitchen prep and stuff, and I'll take some video of that. We'll post that, and I'll take some video of me splitting wood with this and doing some feather sticking as well, just so people have an idea, but I'm sure it'll do just fine at those things. But yeah, I really truly think this is a really good all-round knife. You know, you could use this for a little bit of everything. You use it as a camp knife for food prep really easily. You can use it as a steak knife when you're eating your steak. You can use it for hunting, processing game. You use it for self-defense. You use it for just like a hiking knife, for like almost like a small survival knife effectively. You know, you can just keep it in your truck, whatever. So I think it fits a lot of roles, and because of its lightweight, I'm a lot more likely to take it with me. I'm getting to the point, you know, where I realize that when something's quite heavy or cumbersome or both, even though if I really love that thing, like a knife or whatever, I find I don't take it with me as much because it's just too annoying. Whereas something like this is just really easy to take with you. It's another reason I like my Cold Steel Pendleton Mini Hunter, because it's just such a good little pocket fixed blade. You can just shove it in there and take it with you anywhere. So yeah, I'm quit ranting here, but basically I'm really impressed with this knife. I think it's really great. If you're thinking about getting one, I wouldn't hesitate to get it. It's worth the price tag, in my opinion. And I really don't think you can go wrong, as long as it kind of fits your kind of intended use for it. So yeah, thanks for watching. It's kind of a quick, well, nothing I do is quick with tabletop reviews, but that's a tabletop review. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. You have one of these knives, you have it in a different steel, and maybe you have the MagnaCut version or the AUS 10A version. Let me know what you think of the knives in the comments. Thanks for watching.